Why isn't it going like?
Look at that chair. Isn't that an amazing chair?
Look at that chair, wouldn't we? I'd love
link in the description.
Link in the description. I don't know where that link is. This is the gratuitous chair.
It's secret.
And now
secret lab.
It's a secret chair.
No.
Mad bomb at the back. So that's got us flipping demonetized straight away along with the secret chair. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. I started early because of the chair, thinking he would get back into the chair very quickly. Oh, here it is. Right, here we are. Yeah, I went, don't worry, Ian. I did it. We're live,
Your
mate.
commission is coming, Gary. Don't you worry.
Oh, excellent. I can't wait.
It must be tea.
It must be majillions of pounds, I should imagine. But perhaps the greater value over there is, I believe, Turkey's ham and petrol is the currency.
Petrol's fine. That blew over last week. That was last week's problem. This week's problem is don't expect to buy anything because you can't. That's the reality. Nothing. If you want any electronics, sorry, shops doors closed.
It's interesting. What's it going to do to the industry? This STM32 shortage. I mean, surely the supply chains have used up all their stock, and at some stage, we're just going to sit around twiddling our thumbs because you just can't buy anything.
And literally, there was a notice this week, and I've only seen it one place, but I don't know if you've seen it anywhere else, of another price increase from STM and the shortage. We're now having flight controllers move over to SOCs that are frankly unnecessary, but they're doing it because they can buy it. You can't buy any electronics easily in the UK. You can't buy a Ring doorbell. You can't buy anything that has any form of smart technology in that uses an STM32. It just, not for sale.
My cache of NAIS 32 boards is increasing in value by the day.
Well, did I say last week? I don't know if it happened last week, but I had somebody reach out to me and ask if I had a stock of it, if I had any boards at all, and did I know anybody that had some hidden at the back of a cupboard. And that was for autonomous boats that they sell here, are really bait boats, which I didn't even know were a thing, for not just a bait boat that's autonomous, but going out into the sea. And through quite big breakers, big waves to get the bait out there. I didn't know that was a thing. And the chap's desperate, looking for autopilots for boats he's already sold.
Because we're discussing about the situation in China where their output is low as well because of energy issues. So the whole thing is winding itself into a bit of a spiral at the moment.
It is, yeah. I was talking to someone this week, and they dropped it on it that just, they've been at reduced output for 3-4 months, and it brings in the interesting question of how much of this is STM32 shortage, how much of this is production run shortage. It's the perfect storm. And on top of that, you've got a lot of stuff going on in China, like this property company that's looking like it's going to collapse. And that will have waves because they will own property that businesses are in, and stuff like that has waves throughout
Unlike nuclear submarines, they don't create waves when they're under the water. Never mind. But so if you're watching this, now's the time to buy your secret lab chair while stocks are available. Link in the description.
Yeah, you can get this. Like, I've been trying to buy a flight controller this week for a build, and I've ended up recycling one I forgot I bought a month ago. I stuck it on the shelf like we do and forget about these things. And I think out of one of the websites of they hold usually about 132, there was 5 in stock. And that's across the board. And it's everywhere. It's affecting motors, ESCs, anything that requires production time is being affected out of China as well. So
I see a resurgence in free flight gliders coming up. Yep.
Oh, it would be nice. There's nothing wrong with that.
It's the price increase is going to be the next thing, because and it raises an interesting question that Autel's new drones, people have sort of balked at the pricing. However, Autel might actually be setting the benchmark here of where we expect things to be moving forward. And that is the reality.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of talk of hyperinflation too, because governments around the world have taken on so much debt that they can't repay. The only way to do it is to either tax the living hell out of people, or to just inflate it away through quantitative easing, which means the prices will never go down. It's just the value of your money will go down. And so the actual, that's how hyperinflation works. Things get cheaper because the money's worth less. So $1 million today is worth half what it's going to be, was worth twice what it's going to be worth in 5 years' time.
It is, and
Probably.
the UK's already hit on that. The UK's had its tax hike, and that's the beginnings of it. There's talk in the UK. We've just had an increase in national insurance. There's talk of an increase of council tax, which will all feed down to about 70-80 pounds a month in people's pockets on average. That's before you even start, and then add the increase of consumer electronics. Just look at the price of kids' toys right now. PlayStation 4s and 5s. This stuff that people buy this time of year is many hundreds of pounds. We're not talking 200-300. We're talking 500-600 pounds. New iPhone,
Really?
£1,300. We're beginning to get to the stage where electronics again is going to become a luxury, because we've spent a good 20 years swimming in electronics that you can buy, and if you wanted the very best, yes, it was expensive, but there was always something below that. There was always another manufacturer undercutting it out of China, and that is now the bit that's going to go. That bit in the middle and bottom is where the problem's going to be.
Second-hand car prices have gone mad. That's interesting, because they've always been extreme here. Car prices
that's because new car supplies dried up. So naturally, if there's no one's buying new cars, no one's selling the old ones. So there's a shortage of supply in the second-hand market. It's a cycle that feeds itself. It's going to get a lot worse before it gets a lot better. But I don't care, because I'm in New Zealand and we're always happy down here. Summer is on the way.
I think it's fair to say, I reckon we're going to see probably 20% increase across the board in drones, FPV, and I think new models coming from manufacturers will be substantially dearer. There's talk of the big company that's set to potentially release a new drone only selling that via direct for the first 2 to 3 weeks. Now, is that because they want to keep all the margin for themselves because of component prices, or is that because of a lack of supply, so they can probably only sell enough that they can control, or is it a reality of both? And I think it's probably somewhere in the middle.
Well, so this might finally be worth something.
Yes,
you're still intact. But of the what was I going to say then? But they've already knocked out the enterprise dealers, knocked them out of the way. So is this going to be knocking out everybody else?
It's not the first time they've pulled this. They have done this in the past, not for some time. In recent years, releases have been very much everywhere within a week. So you can go to your dealer, you can go to DJI, and in fact, it's often been the case if you ordered from DJI direct, it took longer than it would from a dealer. However, I've heard this from multiple sources that on this occasion there's going to be no dealer involved early doors, so the first sales will be direct only. And that is a big middle finger to dealers, because dealers rely on sales. And look, all of those initial purchases are going to be in that first 2 weeks. We know that's when all of the rush out purchases are. After that, it's the steady flow, not that initial grab. And look, they used to do it with the affiliate scheme. Before they cancelled it, they used to drop the affiliate income percentage to 0% for the first 2 to 3 weeks. And they started doing that towards the end, and it frankly really peed off a lot of people, because why would you actively promote something if you're not going to get commission? But they wouldn't say that until the day.
So you'd run out your promotion, and
so your promotion would start, and then suddenly it would change. Now, it's going to be really interesting this time to see the actual promotion on these new products, because there's no affiliate scheme. If they're selling direct only, that's going to cut out all the Banggood affiliate links and all of those kind of ones as well. So this is going to be DJI on their own with their paid advertising via all of the big channels. Look, they do a nice job, but let's not pretend it isn't a paid advert. And it's going to be really interesting to see how many ads are made, because on the last product launched, it was dramatically less on that Osmo. I could see it. It was substantial. I think there was only like 8 videos on the first day, which is unheard of.
I want to know what's going to happen to YouTube, because so many people are reliant on their affiliate links with all sorts of products. And if you simply cannot get the product, then people cannot buy the product. So those channels that are heavily reliant on those affiliate links will find that their revenues tend to dry up. They've been focused on pushing product. They may have to go back to creating content. Oh my goodness, what will happen?
Well, it's been weird for like the anyone who follows the channels with computers and gaming. They've had to stop making content on graphics cards because everyone was fed up of them talking about graphics cards and not being able to buy them. And you are seeing an exodus out of the drones. We've seen it with DJI. There's been a couple of high profile channels, 100,000 to 300,000 subs ones, Bruce's level, who have now said, we're done. We're no longer using this. We're going to use Autel and other things. And I do wonder on some of these if there is a backhand involved in that. You know, it's premium timing. But the fact they are losing a lot of people, and it'll be interesting to see if they're just happy to sit there and say, well, let's let all of this go and see how it actually goes. Were they giving away a load of money for no good reason at all? Or are they actually going to see a real drop in the amount
but
of
people are paying for this new product? This product is going to sell. It's going to sell in numbers, isn't it? I don't think they have to do a lot. Yeah, they
people
don't have
are
to do a lot.
for something. Yeah.
Look,
You know,
until they get their first energy bill of the winter.
Yeah, look, I've been having a chat with a dealer this week to try and put something in place moving forward because I'm no longer involved in things. I'm not in the position where I'm not sent stuff anymore. I'm not in a position where I can go and buy anything above, anything above a couple of £100 is a loss. What people I don't think realize is the income, even for someone of Bruce's channel's level on his videos, it's never going to cover an FPV drone, let alone a three.
He hasn't got one of the chairs. I mean, that shows you how poorly he's doing. He hasn't even got one of those chairs.
And I've been talking to a dealer this week to try and come up with something where I can get access to product to borrow, because that's the position I'm in now, and many others are going to be in the same boat. So it's going to be a very different launch, a completely different one to in the past.
Yeah, I think it'll go well. I think they've lined it up. I don't think they'll worry, and I think they're making car sensors for the autonomous electric cars in China, and it will be cheerio, adios. We don't need this pain in the ass little business in a minute.
Someone said something interesting, and I don't know if you noticed, they haven't replaced Brendan. Brendan has left, and there's been no replacement there. And there has even been talk of, do we even think we'll see them start to unwind some of the things that have been done, like NFCs and that stuff? It's interesting that there's been like no focus on drones really from them as a company for a while.
Yeah, they're doing other stuff. They don't need to. They don't care. They don't care. It's great. It's got them where they are. But yeah, they don't care. And talking about not caring, hello, Louis. How are you?
Oh, guys. Just looking at our friend from down under that caused all that kerfuffle with WhatsApp, Instagram. All the poor influencers out there are so sad. Come on, 6 hours without doing crazy dances.
My cat is so depressed. My cat is so depressed. He's not getting any limelight while Facebook's down. It's terrible.
Yeah, you got for 6 hours. You lost all your friends. Oh God,
I have only one friend on Facebook, and I only got one friend on Facebook because you can't create a group without having a friend, because you've got to link a friend, and that's the only reason I have any friends on Facebook. I've got thousands of friend requests, but I just ignore them because Facebook. In fact, I thought that yesterday the internet, you know how the internet's designed to route around problems? I thought it had finally worked out. Facebook was a problem and it routed itself around it. But
yeah, it just gone. Yeah,
the best one I read was some fact-checked company checked Facebook and declared it as not trustworthy. So
yes.
Well, that's what the whistleblower says, isn't it? That woman that's done the whistleblowing on Facebook says that it's a terrible place to be, and they just put money ahead of ethics and all sorts of things, which we all knew. But she's come out and actually told the truth.
What a surprise for a company to do that!
And not like Google, No.
Oh no! Nobody else does that. Not even the famous YouTubers.
It's interesting. Imagine the meeting. I mean, the buck will stop somewhere, won't it? Just imagine how that meeting is going to go. But I believe you chaps were talking earlier that they couldn't even get into the building to sort it out because it was someone explained that to me why that was. They couldn't get.
From what I heard, one story that because everything is linked through the Facebook domain name server and all the IPs are linked, that the access controls were disabled because they couldn't resolve Facebook. So the panel on the door couldn't resolve to talk to the server, which opened the lock on the door and things like that. It was such a catastrophe. And everyone, of course, is working from home hundreds of miles away. So there's this building completely cut off from the world and you can't get in to fix it. So wonderful times.
You've not heard of keys, you know.
Oh, that's so old school, Gary.
Yeah, I know.
It's interesting, isn't it? It is a classic example of, you do know, there's one poor guy who hit the button to, the install or upgrade firmware or save as done.
Yes.
Exit.
So he'll only be getting half his normal bonus this year, I suspect.
Some poor guy somewhere was crying.
I guess. But I think the best technical reading I've seen is from the guys at Cloudflare. Those guys really go on detail, and I've posted here the link so you can share it, Gary.
Okay.
It's quite an interesting story. Let's just say it dives deep in the technical details, but you need to understand a few things about how the internet works. Just start with the Red Bible and go from there. But imagine if Facebook was the authentication scheme for all the DJI drones.
Well, as MacVision says, imagine if this was a UTM? All these drones aimlessly wandering around the skies. How on earth would we survive with 6-hour outage? Because when a UTM fails, everything's in the air. And how does a drone know what to do if it's lost contact with the UTM? You're creating a problem that wouldn't exist if you didn't build a UTM in the first place.
Hey, Bruce, this is a nice argument for you for the next round of complaining.
Yeah, I've already got that in my whinge pocket here.
Next round. It's not a next round. It's continuous. It's an ongoing. It never stops. It's pretty the next round.
Because Jet's wine. That's what it is.
There you go. A UTM never fails, just like Lang never fails. So true. 507.
It's a lot of fuss though for a website going down. That's the reality.
What's I saying, Bruce?
Yeah, when your website goes down, you don't have this problem, do you, Gary? The world doesn't stop.
Some people notice. Every time people notice before I do, that's for sure. But we just said to Bruce before we started, we've got this young lad who's been at school in the IT section for a couple of months, and he happens to live on site. So the staff just that live on site started pestering what's going on, and he was a hop and skipping away from resetting our core and all our firewalls and all that, because he thought that's probably what he needed to do. He managed to get there before him, but the level of panic, even for a small school in the Natal Midlands, was quite extraordinary. And it was only their Instagram, WhatsApp and Facebook that was down.
You realize the next time your website goes down, Gary, you're going to get a phone call from Zuckerberg. He's going to go, ha, and that's it. That'll be your advice.
Well, I know he's often looking.
He's an avid reader, I gather.
I'm sure that Zuckerberg will be sorry when Gary also loses $5 billion. Like Zuckerberg was.
No, look, when it's down the back of the sofa, you haven't lost it. You just haven't looked for it. That's quite simple. Yeah. It's the technical definition of that, really. Yeah, I mean, is it $5 billion? Is that what they're saying it is? Or that's just the stock price?
5,000 millions. That's $5 billion for Americans.
He'll just fire up his Raspberry Pi and make some new Gary coin. That'll solve that problem.
Yeah, they'll sell a bit more user data and get that money back in no time at all. Don't worry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well,
no,
allegedly.
Allegedly.
No. Given the kerfuffle yesterday from Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, I heard that some of our friends are going, like Zuckerberg, are going to offer $10 per hour of compensation to every Facebook user. So you just have to sign in on a Nigerian site.
Yeah, Louis got a website you can register.
No, what you do is you send your credit card details so they can credit it to your card. You see, it's very good. Saves messing around. Yeah,
definitely. Doverans. I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong. Have we talked about that Chinese drone swarm performance already? I'm assuming you mean the unswarming mode that one had.
Come on, it was swarming. Come on.
It was heart-swarming to see those drones falling like snowflakes. It was beautiful. I think it was choreographed. I'm sure they did it on purpose.
I think they missed the lighting, because if you shot that at, say, 8 frames per second, you can see the rays of light coming down. It will be a very nice effect.
I think this justifies the Transport Canada position that sub 250 don't really pose a threat to people, don't need prescriptive rules. They're really quite safe intrinsically. And you know, so why lump them in with 14-kilogram octocopters carrying red cameras?
Well, that swarm, I've forgotten the name of the company now. But that's not the first time that's happened either. There's 3 or 4 occasions that they've had like that. Where it's
I just wonder from the laws of probabilities, why don't swarms get more issues, or at least we don't notice more issues? Because come on, it's 1,000 drones. 1% of failure. It's a lot of drones. So
the thing is, you look at the video though; they're not really falling; they're controlled landing.
Yes. They're fail-safe or something. They're just in the descent.
And that's exactly the mode all the other ones have failed in. They haven't failed in a complete chaos of crashing drones into each other. They failed in a controlled manner. They just happened to be over the center, pretty much the city center. That one wasn't.
It was just the world's biggest drone delivery.
Yeah, absolutely, of actual drones.
When they come down, I just saw one bounce off something. It didn't, I'm not even sure it would give you a headache. Looking at it, it was fairly low speed, low impact.
That's because you're hard in Wales. It'd be hard to give you a headache in Wales. Yeah, no, I mean, as we've said, I think it probably was some sort of a deliberate failure mode that they went into, and it was a fairly.
It almost looks like low battery emergency land. This is sort of what it reminds me of. Is a critical landing. I'm wondering if someone forgot, because I'm guessing they're rechargeable units. They're not going to use single-use cells, I wouldn't think. So someone
could have been so many things. Could have been someone with a microwave oven in the back of their car with the door open, jiggering on the protection switch. It could have been something as simple as a massive loss of GPS in that area for some reason, and they all default to the land gently mode. So, but whatever it was, it just shows that the risk was very, very small. Now, a flock of birds, however, is a completely different thing, because I saw an airliner at Atlantic City International Airport. The engine caught on fire when it ingested a bird. That was one bird. And flocks of birds bring down airliners into the Hudson, yet drones are the real problem, apparently.
They definitely are. We'll come on to your video in a minute of that bloody Stearman incident, but I just wanted to see if anyone else had also seen the people that had the suspended load under quite a big hexacopter.
Oh, God.
You saw that one as well.
That's so many things wrong on that video. That's come on. They were trying to do that. Because come on, a big bird like that on a very confined space does not seem to be any kind of setting up of the drone. What were they expecting?
Yeah, I mean, it was. Yeah, it is. Well, what were you thinking of taking off that close to the cars, as you say, with such a big platform? Why would you ever do that? Ever? Unless it was, I suppose it was a super tested thing you'd done 1,000 times and you knew it was going to work perfectly. And the second the oscillation started, they could have grabbed that load. They were holding on to it beforehand. They could have wrested it to the ground, couldn't they? But yeah, that was pretty spectacular. I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything on that, but
I really think the guys were asking for it. I think they were trying to go on TikTok with that one. So I think
only because Facebook was down.
Yeah, Facebook was down.
TikTok was not down.
No,
TikTok
exactly.
was not down.
Or they could have tweeted it, perhaps, or they could have,
couldn't have Instagrammed it though.
It's interesting looking at that. They said the last time there was this incident, it was due to a rival company jamming the drones. So you wouldn't be shocked if it's the same thing again in this Chinese one.
Well, then we kind of, we have that's the fail.
I just thought of drone wars where you have swarms of drone, they compete in the air over your heads, one team against the other. You're competing company versus one company. That'd be a spectacle to watch, wouldn't it?
I think we just left the big arena for that, didn't we? I thought we've just left that sandy place where they were playing that game.
I thought we tried that in 1946 and it didn't work out too well.
Well, China's about to try it on Taiwan by the look of it.
Whoa, don't.
Well, they keep flying all their warplanes into Taiwanese airspace, and I mean, it's a pretty simple strategy. You do that, you drive right up to the door, and then you wait and see where all the anti-aircraft installations light up with radar, and they're the first targets, and then you back off, and next time you can do it for real.
Well, they've equipped thousands of their however many 2 or 3 generations ago jet fighters with that they're autonomous now, like the Yanks have done with the F-16s, and then it was going to be when the 50 of them are coming over the hill in a formation, guess the one that's got the bloke in it. It's good. Yeah, it's not an adversary you'd be wanting to play games with. Well, I don't think anyone would. Oh, let's not go there. That'll be, yeah. But the worst thing that's happened to the world ever since Facebook was started was the 6-hour outage, the COVID that we've all lived through for the last 18 months was just a mere trivia.
Calm before the storm.
And nothing. Linked to the hexacopter crash. I can't remember where I see it. Can anyone remember where we saw that, Louis?
Wouldn't it be on a good news website?
Oh no, come on! These things are all the flipping time, aren't they? You're not going to do that. The Stearman as well. That Stearman in some place in America land. That was just.
It was Houston, Texas, wasn't it? Somewhere in Texas. Yeah.
Nuts,
I think
that was.
Somebody had skin in the game, as you say.
Some TikTok feed. It's worthy of TikTok. At least the duration is also from TikTok. So.
But the Stearman, it does, and there's been another couple of, very sadly, a couple of fatals down here in South Africa this week, and no doubt in many other places in the world. But yeah, we would have Facebook had it. That's it, Robert. That must have been where it was. We're just not being held to the same standards. And I know, I'm glad that Mark's in a place where the internet's not working properly, because I pointed out on Twitter somewhere, I saw that an American company bought a UK multi-rotor manufacturer, but that has given them a golden ticket to access yet another overseas company accessing the future flight stuff and the BVLOS stuff at Cranfield. And that money was supposed to go towards UK innovation, and it's not, and it's getting Wing & Co in. And I saw quite a big article talking about Wing and how Wing, and it was in South Africa. A South African newspaper was talking about how Wing is going to make us pay for lower airspace use. And even a newspaper here was saying, seems a bit off, doesn't it, when children could be flying kites or flying. Even a newspaper here, who should be saying it's wonderful, marvelous, and all those other good things, are saying it's a bit off, isn't it?
Well, I'm just hoping people will wake up. Eventually, people must wake up. It's just if we wake up before it's a fait accompli, that's good. But it's probably going to be afterwards. That's once things are in place, it's very hard to unwind them. Better to stop them in the first place. And this, as you mentioned, there's been a few quite bad fatals recently, and there's been some mid-airs again, helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft colliding, and yet there's no directive, no mandate that they must all have ADSB and TCAS, which would prevent that. But we do have to have remote ID. It's like, why are you mopping up the drink rings on the bar of the Titanic while there's an iceberg coming through the wall?
And that was that one that Meg's talking about in Italy was terrible as well. I mean, of course, they're all awful. And as Bruce's great video this week rather points out, the skin in the game thing, it's meaningless. It's completely meaningless to flight.
The thing that annoys me about that, though, is that regulators try to insult our intelligence by expecting us to believe this. I mean, if you treat us like idiots, you can't expect to get respect back and compliance as a result. They have to learn how people work. If you insult somebody by suggesting they're so stupid they'll believe that, why would you think that they will say, "Oh, well, we're going to follow your rules. We hold you in high regard"? No, you've been treating us like morons, and we're not going to do anything you say. That's the problem. If they want compliance, they have to earn the respect, and they're not doing that at all at the moment.
The UK stood up, the CAA there stood up a urban air mobility group, and working with industry experts in the eVTOL space. That means you wear a tie and a suit, and you're older than Bruce even. I'm sorry, Bruce, that's a bit rude.
I don't know if that's possible.
Well, probably not, no. But, it's people you've never heard of, never, ever heard of in the UAS space. And they're all stood around an aircraft being the experts. It's quite worrying, and able to tout the urban air mobility myths that keep going round and round. It's just a worry. For years we've been banging on about remote ID now. It is for years. It must be 4 or 5 years. We've picked up on this, I'm guessing. And people need to start hearing, and people really need to start watching Wing like a hawk. Because they are maneuvering. They are maneuvering.
Or like a raven.
Or like a raven. Oh, yes, quite so. Quite so. Yeah, but it's just kind of, it's this completely different unit to the delivery drone unit. It just happens they can go, oh, look at our press, look at our delivery drones. This is what we do. It was a completely different unit. It's not those people. Sure, there was that. Oh, I know what else I needed to say. Race day quads. They've had what have they had, Bruce? You can unpack that a little bit.
Well, better. They've got a response from they filed their petition, and the FAA has responded, or the Department of Justice has responded on their behalf or something. Anyway, there's a response to the race day quads petition to have the remote ID bill thrown out. And when I first looked at what race day quads had submitted, and they were using Fourth Amendment protection, I knew that was going to fail. It hasn't failed yet. I mean, the courts haven't ruled on this, but it's very clear that the FAA has done exactly what I expected they would do. And they've said, Fourth Amendment doesn't apply because public safety and national security, that's our get out of jail free card. And we've seen that used many, many times before to set the Constitution just to one side because it doesn't suit the agenda on the table. And that's what's going to happen here. It doesn't matter how, even if they prove it is a breach of the Fourth Amendment, which I don't know that they could, because this whole privacy thing is a little bit, hard to prove with just because you've got a beacon on your drone. But even if they proved that, then they just play the trump card, no pun intended, and say this is national security and public safety. I'm sorry, we're going to do it anyway. The thing that I find interesting is that the reading into that, I've done a bit more reading since, the remote ID has to function when the drone is operating in the national airspace. So when it's landed, it doesn't have to broadcast. So I don't know if they don't have the spec finalized yet, but does the spec state that, or does the spec say that must be broadcasting at all times? Because remote ID has to be able to sense when the craft is taken off, because it doesn't have to broadcast until it's in and operating in the national airspace. And how does it know if you're flying indoors? That's not national airspace. So there's a whole lot of things for the remote ID that are yet to be finalized. And you're passing a rule to mandate something where you haven't even defined exactly what it does. So this is another area where they perhaps need to focus on working out the detail, because without detail, you can't implement the rule.
Yeah, I was just going to say weight on wheels as well, squat switch. Yeah, exactly.
But
indoor. But remember,
what about
Australia,
the add-on? The add-on unit, it won't know. There's no way to link it in. It's just a thing that sits on the side. It won't know until it's taken off. And the rules, other things like it has to report all this information. Now you're flying a drone with an add-on remote ID, or a model aircraft with an add-on remote ID, and you flip inverted. Suddenly it's no longer able to tell you where it is because the GPS antenna is pointing at the ground. Does that make it an illegal flight? There are many, many details yet to be addressed. And I think they should state, there's no justification for the rule, and there's no way to effectively implement this rule on model aircraft because they can fly upside down, and therefore they no longer have remote ID providing all the mandated information.
Well,
yeah.
if they have that problem, just put antennas and receivers on the other sides. Problem
But
solved.
then it becomes an unrealistic burden on the model flyer. You have to have 2 remote IDs, and then you can't fly knife edge, or you need 4 of them. And you can't climb vertically, or you need 6 of them. It's like, no, it's impractical. It must be practical. And if cost or the burden of cost is such a big thing that you can't put ADS-B on all aircraft, you can't mandate it on all aircraft because it'd be an unfair imposition on the aircraft owners, then why can't that same rationale be applied to people who are flying $60 foam models? Why should they have to spend 3 times as much on add-on remote ID units, whereas the owner of a $100,000 aircraft can't spend $5,000 on an ADS-B? We have to look at this.
You said the key words. Practical and legal. Legal doesn't have to be practical. So if they come to the conclusion they need 8 receivers, 8 transmitters on each aircraft for any access, they'll go and do it. They don't care about practicality. They just care to enforcement.
From the legal perspective, if you look at the manual for rule making in the USA by government departments, they cannot produce arbitrary rules. Rules must not be arbitrary. And this is an arbitrary rule because the FAA has failed to prove that without remote ID, these bad things will happen. In fact, they've had 10 years during which without remote ID, none of these bad things have happened. So therefore, to produce a rule that solves a problem that does not exist is an arbitrary rule. That's where they should be focused. I think they do put capricious and arbitrary in their claim. I'm still reading through that. But they should focus far more on that than on any Fourth Amendment possibilities. And as someone asked in the comments there, should we bring back a 336 exemption? Yeah, I think our only hope as a hobby is to slice us out of the commercial drone operation thing and say, look, we are a hobby operated safely for decades. There is any rule that controls us by requiring remote ID is totally arbitrary and therefore not allowed under the rulemaking process. Challenge it on that point of law and say, you must provide the burden of proof. And
did the AMA welcome Part 107 and help it on its way?
Yeah, 107 is for commercial operation. Well, they fought against Section 336. I know that what is his name? The guy Rich or whatever his name is. The head. He slept very, very authoritatively during that discussion.
Yes,
I could see him in Zoom. It was terrible. It's like, but remember the AMA is only interested in what's best for the AMA, not what's best for the hobby. They don't represent the hobby. Flight Test is a better representation of the hobby, but even then, they're only interested in what's best for Flight Test. No, I like to think I'm out there crusading for the hobby without any commercial interest other than, I make my living out of the hobby, I suppose, but I'm out there for the rights of hobbyists, and it leaves me agnostic in a way that they can't be. So. I'm just going to continue what I'm doing, and hopefully we'll make some kind of a change. But people just have to get off their backsides and join in. They're all sitting there going, "Yay, good on you," but then they just sit around and do nothing. It's quite disappointing.
Come on, we have to ask for a Facebook meltdown again, so people get off their backsides and do something because they're too busy playing Facebook friends or. What's farming simulator or whatever it is that they play on Facebook.
Minecraft and Fortnite. They're the things, Louis. Don't you play them? Oh, my goodness.
I've got a story about I'm in trouble about Minecraft. I've got myself for my birthday. I bought myself one of those Raspberry Pi 400s because I just wanted one. So I got one. And I said to our 6-year-old, it's got a version of Minecraft on it. And he hadn't played Minecraft before. And he's become obsessed in the first hour of using it. So I'm in a bit of trouble with the wife about that. Not actually a bit of trouble, a lot of trouble.
You'll only see him when he's 18. So don't worry.
Pornhub would have kicked in.
That's also true. Yeah, that's true. Here's the bright side. Now, Simon mentioned how long before VPN for drone UTM displacement. Well, that was already here with the DJI hack thing, which did that to the GPS, didn't it? A couple of years ago. So we actually
there's been a few hacks on that and stuff. I suppose The problem is it depends if the European, if you take the original NPRM, as Bruce said originally, there was no getting around it, because if the aircraft couldn't connect, it wasn't even allowed to take off, and spoofing would get very difficult at that point. Not impossible, but we'd end up back in the old mod chip territory. And those who've been around long enough to remember the old PlayStation and Xbox hacking, we've all, you'd be there soldering on a little pick just so it changed the region code of the that the CD was being read from, and it would carry on. And the very, old methods tend to work, and I can see people doing stuff like that. There was a device for the Inspire 1, if I remember, which took your GPS coordinates and just moved it X amount to allow you to fly in no-fly zones. So it would literally just offset by whatever you said, 500 meters, 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers. And the theory was it would still remain accurate and land where you took off from, because the offset remained a constant. So as long as the offset worked, but it did have some issues. So there's always a solution. People come up with clever solutions to these things.
They do.
Like the tinfoil hat for your drone. That works really well.
Yeah.
Yes, that really was popular, wasn't it, for a long time?
It was until they gimped that with, I think it's a 35-meter altitude limit now if there's no GPS.
Yeah. Works for people, though. We're one of those. It's fine. Stops the satellites getting to your brain.
It'll be interesting to see if DJI do unwind some of this. Perhaps they will begin to unwind. They've lost their voice in the US. And, if you look at this straight, DJI have done everything the regulator has ever asked of them, and it's got them nowhere. And all it's done is
they did it kicking and screaming all the way to do it.
I'm not sure they did, Louis. No, look, if you're going to call someone kicking and screaming, Autel, Unique, they all put workarounds in for NFC. DJI
who's that? You-Who?
Well, an old company.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because I've always said that, compliance doesn't always get you anywhere. You sometimes you just need to take a stand and say, no, we're not having this. DJI has been compliant and gone away long. Look where it's got them. It's got them on a blacklist, basically. Well, they should have stood up and said, no, we're going to do this or do what we want to do. Wouldn't have hurt them in any way compared to what they're facing now.
They tried to drive the narrative. I think they tried very, very hard to drive the narrative. That's partly why we've got the 250 gram gig, and their version of remote ID, which was quite a good version of remote ID, to be fair.
It works. And look, something for them changed the day that drone landed on the White House lawn. I was involved in the Facebook groups at that time, and I know that caused them a lot of problems. Yes, it was an idiot.
Yes, but what happened? Someone landed an ultralight auto gyro on the lawn of the White House. Do we see remote ID required on microlights? Do we see registration? It's easier now to fly. Still easier to fly an ultralight than it is to fly a drone from a legal perspective. So that landing on they chose to use that to leverage something other agenda.
I think parts of them did, and I still think DJI were advised, and I'm not going to say by who internally, but I think there was a push from the American side to appease regulators in this way, and they pushed it hard for many years. I'm not going to say the regulators told them this, but they tried to head off anything coming through this behavior. And the reality is, as Bruce said earlier, they're still on the entities list. They're still blacklisted from commercial and government. They've done everything they were ever asked to do, yet and more, yet it still hasn't delivered them what they wanted. So will they now just go, you know what, we're going to do what we want? But there is the PR element that has to still be taken into account.
They'll just slide off and making the car sensors and cameras and all the other stuff. They'll just saunter off in the other direction.
The interesting thing is that DJI probably also put in this geofencing because every news story involving a drone near an airport showed a picture of a DJI drone. So they probably tried to do that as a method of damage control. But it didn't work because newspapers still put DJI drones up, even though they couldn't have flown a drone there because it was in a no-fly zone. There was still the DJI drone. So that was ineffective.
I think it was done with the intention of trying to head off any problems and try to stem any regulation. And it's very possible it worked for 2 or 3 years. To be honest, we can't, it's impossible to go back and say if they'd have had no-fly zones. And look, let's be realistic. There has been sales of hundreds of thousands of many of their products. It's easy to sit here and say it's not done anything, but we're not in the position to show what would have happened if they hadn't done it. And I'm not against it. I've always been open to the fact on consumer models, I have no issues with the system. I do, though, think that for commercial operation, there should be a system in place that allows complete removal, not the messing around you've got today, but total and utter removal, no questions asked.
You say it's easy to sit here, but that's because you have the secret lab chair. Link in the description.
yeah, it's very uncomfortable for me. I wish I had a secret lab chair. Yeah.
Ian has the connections. Ian has he has all the secret keys to disable all the restriction on his Inspire.
He deserves only the finest
really
sitting experiences.
It's only America. In the UK, it's really not an issue. The red zones are literally around airports, and I don't fly at airports. If you fly at airports, pick a different drone. Job done.
I should have.
It's that easy. But there are places like Bruce's flying field is an airport, and that's where problems come up for users. But I'm not totally against it. I never have been. I still don't fundamentally think everyone, and this is where me and Bruce don't agree, is everyone has the right to do whatever they want. I still do think you do have to put some things in place. But
the interesting thing is that DJI's no-fly zones don't match those of the regulations in most countries. In New Zealand, they have a 500-meter radius around an airfield, but you're not allowed to fly within 4 kilometers of an airfield. So what is the point in having a radius that is ineffective in complying with regulation? And it just annoys the snot out of people because I can't fly my drone at the airport where I'm illegally allowed to fly. And if I want to legally fly it, I've got to go through all sorts of steps and things, and it only lasts for a certain amount of time.
Come on, Bruce. Is it that hard to just press and upload the authorization that you have? Come on.
I don't have a SIM card in my phone. My phone is not 3G capable. It's an old 2G phone. I don't have a SIM card in the phone I use connected to my drone because I don't need it. So how do I communicate?
Send a pigeon. Come on.
Send a pigeon, yeah.
It will be interesting if they do... I don't think you'll see them retract NFCs, but I tell you where the hint will be if the hacks get a lot easier, and the Autel effect will, because Autel allow you to fully disable them, they warn you only, and the reality is with these new drones coming from Autel, if they start getting sales en masse, what you might see and what DJI are really good at is backdoors. So, for instance, we have an FCC hack on the DJI FPV system. That isn't a hack. It is a built-in feature that was leaked. It's not a hack.
Yeah.
It couldn't exist without them leaving it there. And I think what we'll probably see is more of that now.
Well, that's fantastic marketing in itself, isn't it? Because people pick up and run like Billio with those. And let me just say before I forget that Tyler and Jonathan from Race Day Quads, because we're moving away from that topic a little bit, will be here to discuss that case when Jonathan has properly gone through that paperwork. I reached out to him a few hours ago to see if they wanted to come and talk to us about it tonight, and they don't because they want to decide what their position is, and then they'll talk to us.
But about the DJI thing, I think they opened a can of worms with that, because if DJI were to advise you, warning you're flying near an airfield, do at your own risk, then the responsibility for making the flight falls on the drone operator. But when DJI says you may not fly here because it's a no-fly zone, then the responsibility falls on DJI. So if their no-fly zones do not match those of the regulations, users who rely on DJI to tell them where they can and can't fly can still break the rules and pose a risk to people. So DJI then becomes responsible because people rely on them for telling them where to fly. I think it's a retrograde step. Yes, advise people, because people are going to do bad things. We'll do it anyway. They'll find ways around any kind of protection. So just say, well, we told you, now it's your problem. That's the best way to handle it.
I can just say, Osprey drone, the FPV hacks on the FPV system are fully intentional. They're not like the FPV DJI drones, the consumer models. The FPV hacks, no, it's wrong. I'm not even using the word hack. The NACO text file and putting a number 1 in it is a software. There has to be code to look for that. That has been left there intentionally. It's not an engineering mode because DJI have a special app for engineering mode because I've used it. It is a workaround that was placed in certain people's hands, not naming anyone, but I might have had an involvement in that. I'm not saying where it came from, but it had to be in there. It is not, it isn't. There are the drone hack stuff, which is people finding around, but DJI over the years have left breadcrumbs in hardware for people to use, and it's not the first time they've done it. They've done it a few times.
What I find interesting is that spectrum regulators are usually really, really hard people to deal with. They're really harsh, worse than airspace regulators. If you do something wrong with the spectrum, you get your bum kicked. Look at how much money was fined to Hobby King when they were selling illegal FPV gear. So why is it that the regulators of the spectrums aren't saying, hey, DJI, you're letting people use FCC power limits in our country where we only allow CE limits, which are an order of magnitude less. We're going to fine you, or you must remove that. Why is it that the spectrum regulators don't seem nearly as concerned as the airspace regulators when it comes to things like DJI drones?
Yeah, it is weird, isn't it? Yeah, those ones they closed because they chose to close them.
But the airspace thing, the airspace regulator in your country will have a simple answer: is you only use our airspace information. You do not rely on anybody else's airspace information. So they're going to nab you, even though you go and fly because your DJI machine says you can fly wherever it is and you can't. They're just going to say, well, it doesn't really matter. You should be abiding by our local regulations. Here, for instance, the exclusion zone around an airport is 10 kilometers, and along the Durban coast, we have 3 airports in a line that you can fly in between that you technically shouldn't be able to with DJI gear. You should not be able to fly there. And yeah, no, it's that leads really where my head is going with that is that leads really, and as Osbo Jones mentioned, the heliport in Australia that's no longer in use. Regulators should have correct digital databases of the airspace, correct, accurate, trustworthy databases. Here for our national park, which is over there, just behind me over there on the Drakensberg Mountains, we could see aircraft going through below 1,500 feet, which they're not supposed to do. We're using our chain of ADS-B receivers, and our friend who's one of the big wardens there, rangers there, said, oh, we need to do something about this. And I said, well, I knew that Richard from Altitude Angel had a problem with putting the national park's airspace there, and on closer inspection, it's actually promulgated 2,000 feet under the tops of the mountains, so it's incorrectly promulgated. So regulators have got to get all that sorted before we go into the brave new world of UTMs and digital skies.
They don't have time for getting their records correct. They're too busy regulating drones.
Now I think that we've all been everybody's been beating on DJI, and I really expect that another company will come up to be flogged like we are doing on DJI. It might be Unique, it might be Hotel, it might be Free Fly, it might be Parrot. Some of those companies will come up to the limelight of the issues with drones.
I'm getting quite annoyed with them. Sorry, I'm jumping on you, Lou, but I'm getting quite annoyed with Parrot because they keep putting out some amazing stuff about that Parrot AI, but they're not putting press releases out and stuff, and they're only sending it to certain people. And I've seen some amazing videos recently of what it's got, what it can do. And it's like, come on, get these out there to the world. I don't know, maybe they're not getting it all out there, and I'm putting it out there just because, again, the chip shortage. Maybe they can't make them at the moment. Who knows? But they're not getting it out there.
Or perhaps they're not ready yet.
Well, maybe they're not. Well, then why did they even tell us about it? Why did they tell us about it so early?
So you didn't rush out and buy a competitor's product.
Oh yeah, thanks. Thanks very much.
There is a lot to cut. I just want to say, yeah, Oz. Look, trust me, they left it there. It's been there for 1 week after the release. It's there and it's been left for a reason. Like DJI choose to close the ones that suit them and choose to leave the ones open that they don't. What you got to take into account is on a product like this, the CE mode was basically unusable. And it was with the FPV drone, and that's why there were many people who were having problems. I remember Bruce commenting, you couldn't get 300 meters without it fail-safing on the remote. The DJI put these things in on purpose, and they choose to ignore the ones that suit them, just like this. There's been, I think, 15 service firmware updates for the FPV system in over 2 years, and they've not once closed it down. It was leaked to a number of us a week after the product launch. It's intentional on them. Now, not unique. Autel are going to get it. Autel have a big problem right now. They've just promised the world they're going to deliver 4 drones, which all look fantastic. 4 at the same time. 4 models of 2 product lines. You've got people tripping over to buy these. So Autel are heading for some pain themselves, because there's a lot of questions of, can they even deliver on what they've promised they can do? We're in a chip shortage and they're pushing out 4 models, 4 completely different units at the same time.
Are they that different? Look correctly in the lines. They're not so different from each other.
But there's enough. They've still got to manufacture them, haven't they? The camera's different on all of them.
Come on, it's just putting some Lego pieces together. These days, it's just a matter of once you have the basics. Come on, we face this with Autopilot every day. We got the flying part right. What else do we need to do? So we are just adding every new stuff to the system, always being careful not to break what's already working. So once you have the core done, it's just a matter, okay, I have a 1-inch sensor. What's the API? This is the API, done. You have an 1/2 inch sensor, done. You have whatever sensor, just plug it to the system. And if you built a versatile enough system to start with, it's just plug and pray.
It is. But this is a company that's made 1 product, and now they're going to be jumping from 1 to now. Well,
you're forgetting the plane.
Yeah, but you can't tell me that's made in the same factory as the drones. That's a different.
Come on, it might be the same group of people working on it. It's quite probable that that's the same group of people, because the fundamentals are very similar. So once you got that thing right, come on, you don't want a drone that oscillates like that crazy video. You want something that sustains position, is stable, everything. And that's just... and come on, it's this. I'm not telling you anything new. Once you have a commercial drone that the components don't change, like for instance on Autopilot, it's a royal pain in the backside to cater to everyone. And like Gary said on a posting today, that it works out of the box for how many percent, Gary?
99%. 99%. 99%. Then you tune it just because,
This is the thing, right? We've had one other company make a drone in the last 3 years, and that's Skydio, and it's taken them 2+ years to get to the production level where you can get one in under a month. And it's that, and they're at that stage now. I think you can actually get one in under a month.
It's a completely different
it's manufacturing. It's no different. Look, this isn't about technical. This is about, can they manufacture the product in the quantities they need to be able to sell? And at the moment, the only company who has a proven track record of doing that is the 3-letter one, and mostly because it's automated. If you look at the Mavic factory, it's something like 70 or 80% automated. It's incredible when you see it. It just does it itself. So, you know, Autel are, they've announced some really amazing products, and I think they're really interesting. However, we have to wait to see, can they deliver?
But how many? But they haven't got to make anywhere near as many as the 3-letter company has got to make. So,
nor did Skydio.
Nor did Skydio. Funny you should say that. I understand there's been a little bit of a stream of returns of those things.
There's a lot of unhappy people on the forums, and that is, and it's and I need to dig this comment up because I put it on RC groups probably a year and a half ago.
Ian. Have you ever seen anyone happy on the forums?
RC groups.
That is true. This is the warranty question, which was, there are a lot more people smashing them up now, and Skydio, and I think I even said it on this stream, there is a point where they're going to have to start saying no, and they're at that point now with many users who've flown it into a tree branch or into a power line or into something that they said it can't do, and they're starting to have to use their warranty terms and conditions, which was the length of my arm, which basically said we won't cover you. And the autonomy is fantastic, but as we know, it's not perfect and it can still crash. And that's, I'm seeing a lot more people, and I think the repair charges have been quite high, $400-500 to get the craft repaired.
Beautiful. So, that's the way forward, isn't it?
On a $1,500 or $1,800, come on, it's a third for a repair. It's not that much. But you get that nice drone that follows you and looks at you from every angle, and does not crash on big trees, only on small trees.
And we had somebody before, we were talking about this new thing, perhaps using its sideways looking cameras to give you a more 360 feed. I can't remember how that conversation was, but somebody on LinkedIn pinged me straight during the show, so I wasn't looking last week, and said, yeah, there is live video feed from all those Avoid cameras on DJI around the side. It's just in black and white, so just make that, I guess you could even use it in black and white.
Have you seen those surround cameras in the cars? You know, cars where you can see right around the car. It's quite clever, isn't it? And I guess it's basically the same type of technology.
Something you guys mentioned earlier, I don't know if we spoke about this. What did you see the thing with Flight Test? Because I know you mentioned Flight Test earlier, that they're closing their store, aren't they? Are they? They're shutting. It was mentioned last week or the week. They put a video out on it, and they're closing.
That's right.
Down.
We've made our fortune. Goodbye.
Let me find it. They were ending sale.
Really?
Yeah. Let me just find it. Unless I'm going mad and dreamed it. If anyone.
Well, I mean, that's
look
very,
at the name.
very possible.
The name says it all. Ian Matt.
Or Ian Matt. Yeah, they are. Yeah,
they put a video up, and I'm sure they said they are ending sale. They're ending the store.
Well, I must admit, I don't watch as many of their videos.
I very rarely watch them because there's too many mid-roll bloody ads. I don't watch things with that many
mid-roll ads. They have a
ads.
second channel as well. What's the second channel called?
The
second channel is the one where they're
games.
The second channel is where they're promoting the hobby and fighting against the ruling, and it's got like 8,000 subscribers because they just do not push it, because their core is not to protect the hobby, it's to make money for Flight Test.
Do we know what it's called, the second one? Flight Test Tech, no?
Superiority to software. Yeah, there you go. It's the story of this. Is it something as a service?
Like Rotor Riot, they may become a computer company. You never know.
Well, Rotor Riot, I mean, you did no end of press releases. It's 2 or 3 a week from them and their various bits and pieces. Now, Ian, you've got me on tenterhooks. I had not caught up with the fact that they might be shutting shop.
I'm just trying to...
You did make it up. You made it up.
No, I definitely watched a video on it, you see.
No, I've seen the writing on the wall. The hobby's doomed, I tell you. It's doomed.
Well... Yeah, I mean, how long, once you find that, well, I don't know what to say that's polite, because, I mean, there's no doubt they've pushed the hobby along into the modern age, as it were, and they've done a great job at it as well.
I could be being completely nuts, but I definitely watched a video in the last 2 weeks.
Well, they've pivoted into real estate. They got $1 million for that golf club.
The problem is, it would have been on one of the... if anyone knows what the second channel is called... because they don't post stuff on the main channel, do they? Like updates and stuff. Oh, channels. You can actually click channels, can't you?
All right, so I'll try and look for it as well then. If that's a game we're going to play, anyone in the comments know what it's called? Flight test, other channel, regulation channels. Regulation, isn't it?
I'm sure it was flight test. I'm 99% it was flight test.
Ian, are you sure? Because lately my YouTube only shows me videos of an old man in New Zealand teaching stuff about RC from 7 or 8 years ago.
It's Flight Test Community, I think. Flight Test Community Association.
Yeah, I just found that one and I can't see it on there.
Yeah.
I can't
9,000 subscribs. It's nothing. But it's where they do their community.
Because they said they had a sale on.
You might say that's nothing.
Yeah.
Well, compared to their main channel, which has got millions, it's really nothing. They're choosing not to push it.
Yeah. It does rather show their hand of their true commitment to.
Yeah, they want to be able to say we're doing our bit, but they don't want to make too much noise because they're in a perfect position. They will have a freer, so they'll be able to make the money, and they will have the CBO title on it. I mean, that's where because it was really kind of cynical of the FAA to come out and say, well, if you're good boys, we'll give you some privilege, and if you effectively allow us to extend our rule-making process by allowing us to dictate to you what your rules are, and making those rules a condition of flying, then, hey, we can sidestep the consultation processes and everything. And that makes me so cross that these organizations would sell out the hobby for their own interests. That's not what it's about.
And it's a real sucker.
That's business.
But this is a song they've been singing for 3 or 4 years. It's all going to be about the CBOs. All going to be about CBOs, having not yet made anybody a CBO. It's
well, they're waiting for people to change their rules to comply.
Isn't that CBO? Isn't that a McDonald's sandwich?
Probably, yeah, probably. Which you won't be able to get in the UK at the moment because various ingredients won't be available.
Yeah. Well, the beef will have red blood disease.
The guys talk about some of the effects of the flight store changing from an outside service to becoming an in-house provider. I need to listen to it again. I definitely watched something on it. Definitely, there's something changing. I thought they said they were stopping to selling out to the direct public, and whether they'd only be selling to members or on site.
I don't see, because they had an agreement, at least in Europe, for distribution through, was it Graupner or someone else? You could buy their kits on a normal hobby shop. It was a distribution through, I don't think it was Graupner, but one of those German.
For someone, they may be going the wholesale only route, because there's a lot of overhead in servicing a market directly. They may be saying, we'll just use our retail partners to do that.
Yeah.
Of course, that assumes that there will be any retail partners in a year's time.
Yeah. I think the big ones will be here for a long, long time, because they make a lot of money in the middle.
And they'll be selling out on remote ID units. That'll be the mainstay of the business. Yeah.
Dear me. So, what other news? We're definitely in waffle mode. English failure. What other news have we seen this week?
My video from the lake the other week, where the boys flew float planes, 250,000 views so far. That's pretty impressive.
You got to go down to the lake more often then?
I think so. But it's interesting that it was, and a lot of people commented on the people that were there. They could hear the comments in the background. And it was a real good PR piece for the hobby, actually. Really impressive. And so I said to the council, look, you've got 250,000 people saw your lake. And they said, that's what they said.
Yeah, but your avowed aim in life is to actually just laugh at other people's misfortune and put them down in any way that you can, I believe.
Where did I see in the news? I saw something in the news that Jacinta was going to award you the Medal of Tourism now that we are opening the New Zealand frontiers. Because
yes, they're going to lock me down so that tourists can throw tomatoes at me. That sounds like a good plan.
Is New Zealand opening up again?
Well, they messed it up so badly. We had a year of zero COVID in the country, during which time they could have rolled out vaccination and got us all ready for opening. And of course, they didn't. They sat on their fat backsides and said, "Look how good we are. We've got rid of COVID. We're fantastic. We're a great government." And then, of course, Delta comes through because they opened up a travel window with Australia, which had Delta. So people came in, like they didn't see that coming. And suddenly now it's, doesn't matter. We'll still eradicate it. We'll eliminate it. And of course, Delta spread so quickly and people are just thumbing their noses at the lockdown things and there's complete mess ups. MIQ's leaking like a sieve. So basically now COVID's out there and they've admitted, well, we probably can't eradicate it from the community. So we're going to push vaccinations now. And if you all get vaccinated in the next few weeks, we'll be able to wind things down to level 2 lockdown by Christmas. And I'm thinking, you just blew such a fantastic opportunity to, storm ahead and make us, and you just blew it because you're too busy patting yourselves on the back. And that's what politicians do. They just, they can only see a short space ahead and they're too busy congratulating themselves to actually do the damn job properly.
Oh, and you still complain about New Zealand aviation authorities. Come on, you have lots to complain about, Bruce.
I've always got lots to complain about. That's my raison d'etre.
Raisins, really? The UK might allow me to and my son to easily come back home and visit us now. We're sitting at 300.
Bring your own petrol.
Bring your own. Exactly. Yeah, we're sitting at 300 cases a day. What you in over there, Ian? About 30,000 a day, isn't it? He's not listening. He's choosing not to listen.
I find it disingenuous now. And these people say, it's all a conspiracy. I've always said, no, it's all common sense. Look at the science. Look at the figures that are rolled out. But now I'm starting to wonder a little bit because the focus has shifted from deaths and from hospitalizations to case numbers. And because of the effective vaccination, you can catch the virus and have no symptoms or the symptom of mild cold. The death rate has plummeted, but they're still on. We must restrict you because we've got this many new cases every day. And I'm thinking, but it's not actually the lethal pathogen that it was in the community. So why aren't you focusing on the real effects? And eventually we're getting down to the point where it's no more dangerous than influenza. And we live with influenza. We don't lock down because of influenza. We've met the vaccination has produced that effect, dropped it right down. So why are they still focusing on rolling out these case numbers, which are totally meaningless in the bigger picture of things? I get a little bit concerned that they've granted themselves these powers due to a pandemic, and now they're so reluctant to give them up. They're coming up with justifications for keeping hold of that power. That's how politicians work.
And we are complaining here about not putting our toys in the air. Come on. There's so many important things, but
Facebook went down. I mean, that's the most important thing.
We could spray vaccine by drone. You spray people. If they don't need vaccine, you spray them anyway.
I was watching the news here, and they went to interview a couple of influencers of Instagram, some girls that put are you very concerned with the shutdown of Instagram and Facebook? Oh yes, my income has decreased significantly because of that, and all the people that adore me cannot see me, so they must be very terrified. Oh God.
Yeah, but that's I thought that was just this, the same effect on all the people that follow me on these things as well. I'm sure.
OnlyFans was still up there, Gary. It didn't affect your income.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah.
Let's look at the predictions for Christmas time. Will we be
December? Sometime in December, I feel.
Yeah. Will we be having drones to play around, new models to play around on Christmas?
Bah humbug, I say.
I think the new DJI and the new Autels will be out there. Whether we have to A, afford them, and B, find them in stock,
can people afford them? With every other cost going up at a rapid rate and the price of the drones being high, people will have to make the decision. Will we have a turkey for Christmas dinner, or will we just sit here and look at the pretty drone?
And have you guys noticed something about what's going on with the new Hubsan Zeno Mini? Something like that. That's the sort of thing. But that's the sort of thing that was designed by former engineers from a major company who were disgruntled and saw a way of reducing costs.
No, that's the drone.
It's not quite, but almost. It's not.
Yeah. Hubsan's always been on toy grade, really, hasn't it?
Yeah.
No, has been on toy grade, but they've stepped up a bit on the pricing. and on the capability.
Expensive toys.
Hubsan, yeah, they've Hubsan had a sub 250. They were the first.
Husband. It's husband.
Husband.
Hubsan. Hubsan. Let me get this right.
I'm glad you got that.
Yeah. They were the first to have a sub 250 drone with object avoidance, but I just never felt happy to give them my money. They make a lot of Chinese tat, and how do you? It's a bit like Kia making an Aston Martin equivalent. You're not going to get away from the fact
they do it. They do it. You know that.
Do they?
Very
Kia?
nice cars now.
Well, Kia
Have you seen the new Lada supercar? The Lada supercar.
Yeah, it's like Lada making a supercar in it. It's always going to be.
Will that come with a little tin of paint in the back?
Yeah.
But the thing is, they've stepped up on capabilities, but they suffer from a reputation problem, because we all see them like doing those $25 drones, and will one of these, and they have the manufacturing capabilities.
True.
Will they be able to deliver?
That's why smart companies produce a premium brand. They rebrand when they go up market. They produce a new brand that people don't associate with the tat they made before. That's a normal move in marketing.
That's what
I think. Yeah.
And in Europe, I think the problem now is because of the change on the VAT laws, that everything that comes in Europe, no matter the price, stops at customs and is taxed. So the crazy imports from the Banggood and AliExpress.
Aren't Banggood adding tax already? They do if you buy from New Zealand. They add the GST, the sales tax, before to the purchase price, and it comes in and it's already paid.
They still stop at customs to verify if the taxes were correctly applied and all that. So we might have a problem with getting these, and they're not. The thing is, okay, I'm looking at the Hubsan, whatever model is, and they also have a terrible taste to name drones, but that's what we are used to. But I'm having some difficulty justifying to buy one of those drones only on specs and a couple of.
I should review one.
And a
I should
couple of
contact them. Say,
send me them for free.
Link in the description.
Yeah,
did you see that America is no longer sending mail to New Zealand? Apparently, there's not enough transport lines open, so you cannot send something by mail from America to New Zealand or Australia or a whole lot of other countries. They've basically shut down the mail routes to those countries because there's just not enough container and aircraft space to move the mail. So they're not accepting.
Ships are stacking up off the US. They can't get them through the ports. They can't get them in outside of, I think it's California and those places. They can't get the ships in. Ships are diverting through to other, even they're going to Vancouver and places like that.
Welcome everybody to the dysfunctional world of Africa that I've lived in for the last 30 years. Let me show you around and tell you how things are going to be for a while. We know how to do it here. Any thoughts on Holybro HM30 digital video link?
I think all these manufacturers, Holybro and such, they will all have a problem of, at least in Europe, of people getting things here in Europe at decent prices and decent time frames. Come on, we look at these specs and what's the price of this thing, and is it that different from whatever the SIA or whatever the chipset has been out there for a year or two? One looks at the specs and that's the same. So
how does it go again, Louis?
Yeah,
sounds like you're backing up for a moment.
It's like all of these things. There are, look, healing has not been perfect. I'll be the first to admit that. It's
God! Just censor this because we don't want Philip to listen.
Philip knows.
However, use a different phone in it, and you'll be fine.
However, it is the only system that has had continuous development to get it to where it is today, where it is solid, and it is the most reliable of all of these on the market. Now, they all have quirks. They all have behavior which we'd all wish they didn't do in some ways, and it's been developed all the time. But all of these ones like SYKI, and you've got the H16 and the H12s, and now you've got this. It's all very well producing hardware and throwing it on the market and saying, we've made this. But is it still going to be there in 2 years' time when you need to buy another air unit because the aircraft's fallen from the sky, or you've lost it, or you want to do another one? And will the bugs be fixed? And what's been proved over time already is all of these other ones don't. They ship with how it works. If it works, great. But if it doesn't, don't expect updates and don't expect it to be fixed. And this is where Hearlink has really done completely different to everyone else, is that Philip has pushed the development. Yes, sometimes it's taken a bit longer than everyone would have liked. However, he is a supporter of ArduPilot, as Louis will attest. You know, the Cube Pilot guys do help Michael. They've employed Michael now to try and push things on, and Michael's feeding in many different areas. At the end of the day, they are a company that is supporting not just the ecosystem, but the users. And this is the problem with the others. If it works, great. And I've just had a look at it. I did see it the other day, and it looks fantastic. But all of these things look fantastic.
The same as the other ones. The ones that the SIA or whatever the name is. And you get, at the ArduPilot forum, you get one of the vendors of the SIA offering that for peanuts from AliExpress. So, and that's the problem. Okay, once you get over all the hurdles to legally import one of these, they are not that cheap. And with the problems of future proofing, that's even worse. And they usually close the system, which is wrong, in my point of view, given the nature of the products. And that's why Philip has some success with the Hearlink thing, although technically might not be the latest and greatest and super duper, but at least is solid enough to grant Ian's support.
Yeah, and now, look, and it comes down to looking at this device. It's actually made by SIYI because it's using their app, which is interesting. So they've worked with them on this as well. So it comes down to, is there someone to shout at when it doesn't work properly and get help? And is there a forum? Is there a manufacturer you can go and talk to? They might not give you the answer you want, but at least you can talk to them. And that's what a lot of this other stuff. And look, on ArduPilot, there's a group on the H16 that people are having problems that have never been fixed. If you're willing to buy something that you might not get support on, and it doesn't matter if the aircraft never comes back, then yeah, spend $200-300 on it. But if you're building a product that's carrying a £500 or £1,000 payload, then you need to make sure you've got yourself covered.
This will be interesting to see how the market changes, because right now people are willing to take a punt on something that's cheap because it's a few $100. But as the price of everything starts going up, people are looking more and more to make sure that that isn't a wasted money, because it's not $200 anymore, it's $600. So why not spend a little bit more and get something that does have the backup support and the longevity in terms of product on moving forward? So it does give, I think, the upper tier a bit more advantage when the lower end comes up to meet them.
Yeah.
Philip does a good, look, Hearlink had a year, it felt like a year in the dark where nothing changed. And I made a lot of content on it, and a lot of people were whinging and thing. But when we did get the updates, they've been thick and fast, and they're now regular, and a lot of the issues have been fixed. It's more reliable than ever. It's more, okay, some of the issues are Q ground control. Q ground control in itself, I don't like the way Q ground control, if the prams aren't in a certain way, it whinges. That's just the way Q ground control is. And with ArduPilot team constantly improving and changing prams, Q ground control is always out of date. Whereas Mission Planner just ignores prams that it hasn't got and carries on. Whereas Q ground control throws its toys out of the pram.
Come on, Ian, it's your fault. Q ground control is open source. You can also suggest the changes.
I think a lot of people
even submit the PRs. Come on, it's not that hard.
I want more parameters.
Yeah.
No, we have
200,000. Here we come.
Now we have parameters to hide parameters.
Yes.
So you can. It's like a Russian doll.
I feel some recursion creeping up on us.
Oh God! Don't even.
But that's partly, Louis, why I said it in that thing, and it is genuine. I've built over 30 things that have flown, and I am, as you guys more than well know, a terrible constructor of flying things. I am a bodger. I am an excellent bodger, and it still flies them out of the box. And the only reason I auto tune it is because then Trajan Co won't shout at me quite as hard. But it just works.
My engineering background does not let me build bodgy things. I'm so nitpicky on getting everything engineering right and flying without computer assistance absolutely right.
Oh yeah,
perfection is the enemy of good
that'll
enough.
happen. Well, multi-rotors you can't do that, but the fixed wing stuff, it's all in balance. It's all in balance.
Yeah, no, I'm in the middle of the wing, and I don't care how it flies in manual. I have no interest in flying in manual.
I do.
Philistine. God, it's not flying; it's pointing.
So lazy. Come on, it's only this side of the screen, this side of the screen that likes to fly manual. You guys are just plain lazy. Come on.
A bunch of girls on the other side, on the right-hand side. Terrible.
Yeah.
I'm finishing. Funny enough, I'm finishing the 900 wing now. That's going to be as Ardra pilot. I've gone over the configuration.
Have you noticed how he sits in his chair so that the logo is clearly visible behind him? Link in the description. Yes, or every moment, never misses an opportunity.
It's died now.
That's professionalism, Bruce. That's a proper professional.
I aspire to be as good as Ian when it comes to
doing promos for chairs. Come on, I also have a chair to promo.
Is that an Apple chair? Looks like an Apple chair to me.
Yeah,
I need to have a look.
That's a secret thing I have. I should have like Victoria's Secret just behind my head here or something like that, isn't it? That's what I should have put there. It flies most stuff, and unfortunately the parameters and all that are an issue because people just move the sliders. They just fiddle with numbers and then things crash.
But how does that automated flying go when the battery doesn't last? What happens then? If your battery starts going flat, what happens if your battery goes flat while you're all switched into auto mode? Does it fall from the sky?
No, you should have set some sort of RTL or whatever.
What happened recently? Didn't the battery disappoint you?
Oh. I am not at liberty to discuss that particular incident that may or may not have happened to a machine. Look, it was nowhere near me, so how could I know anything about it?
Are you familiar with the concept of terminal velocity, Gary?
That's when you throw your computer screen out the window.
The positive or the negative one? I know which one of those terminals are you talking about?
You know which one.
No, it wasn't quite at terminal velocity because it wasn't high enough to reach it. Yeah, no, I mean, batteries fail. Then it goes into the gentle landing sequence that we discussed at the top of this show. But that said, those platforms that I may or may not know about have just been auto-tuned. That's all that's happened with them. They've just been auto-tuned, and they did fly out of the box. You do have to. Obviously you have to make sure, and they were rewired. It's what they're referring to is a delivery drone, a fairly large delivery drone that is separate lift thrust. You have to do things like check all the wiring when the thing comes from China, basically rewire it, make sure all that's all okay. You've got to do that. But other than that, it'll fly out of the box, give an auto tune. Robert's your father's
I think
brother.
DJI has a patent on that, flying out of the box. You can't do that.
Flying out of the box. Oh, I know. There's a couple of American companies got the patents on that, haven't they? All the best landings make a solid sound.
Well, that guy we have who's that guy that comes in, has the flying box? It's like a coffin with wings.
Oh, yes. It's like Chad, but not Chad, isn't it? And has held the speed record for manned electric aircraft, but Rolls-Royce have it now, I think.
Come on, that's
there's not the one. What the one they dropped from the airplane? They drop it from an airplane.
That chap flies the manned Chip Yates. Chip.
Come on,
there's a shortage of him.
The best RC models to get the highest flying speed don't even have a motor.
Absolutely,
Right.
But what do we think of that American company? The name escapes me. Who are claiming the record for the longest petrol powered? Hang on a minute. Let's just check. Which record are you claiming? So you're saying world record for? Oh, look, it's an AMA one, a model aircraft record they're claiming. That's a bit.
They're all drones in the bigger game of things, Gary.
Vanilla aircraft. That's what it is. But yeah, they've put that claim through the AMA. And of course, Zephyr flew for 336 hours in 2010, and since then has certainly flown well over a couple of months, and some people will tell you it's flown in excess of 6 months, maybe even a year. So we're quite far behind in all of that. I don't know. I'm ranting on. What else have we seen, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Going once.
Besides that Hubsan thing, nothing has touched my. So I'm interested in getting some. I believe we'll have surprises from all the major manufacturers until Christmas. Production in the East is ramping up, so let's see what comes up.
Is it really surprises though? Because they have to be producing stuff for the Christmas market. It's not a surprise, is it? I think the surprise is if we go well past November and they haven't.
Well, that makes that everybody is going to buy the new iPhone 13 and nobody will buy a drone.
Quite so. Yeah.
I think we've discussed that we've reached peak drone long ago, and
it's
going to have to require some compelling things, but not so much for people who need the benefits that, like the new Mavic, whatever it is with its mechanical shutter, that'll offer some benefits to certain groups. But the average man in the street, there's no compelling reason to buy a new drone. They've got their Mavic 2 Mini and they're happy. And why would they want to spend a whole lot of money on something that they use once or twice a year? It's just not going to happen.
It is going to be interesting this time around because there's been enough time for the regulation to really set in all over the place in the UK and Europe and the US as well. You know, things are a bit heavier than they've been. And as Bruce is saying, we're
still missing the classification of the drones.
Yep.
Until we got the C classifications, why would you buy a drone knowing that in a few years' time it's going to be less useful?
Exactly.
Although, did you see this week they have openly said they can retrofit now? So Europe, in their meeting, openly said retrofit from the manufacturer is legitimate. So whether
you're going to send it back to put a sticker on,
or they will have to send you something to do it, or on a firmware update. But they have openly said retrofit for C rating is a possibility from the manufacturer. So it is less of a problem now. But if these are coming in at the price we think they're going to be, then it's a lot of money. And yes, all of the good YouTubers will run out and buy them, and you'll have all of those big channels telling you how you need this to change your social media life, and look what it can do, and look, you can do this. But the reality is half of them are doing stuff that is illegal. The other half are doing stuff that most people don't do anyway. And then you're left with people looking, going, well, do I need this when you can buy a Mavic Mini 2 for less than $500, £500? And for most people, it does what they need a drone to do.
It would do 99% of what I need a multi-rotor to do. Almost, yeah.
Because I still don't think anyone really needs object avoidance. I'm still convinced it's.
Oh, come on, Ian! You are the guy that does not want to fly manual drones without computer assistance, and you don't want object avoidance. Once you have it, you'll love it.
I turn it off. Every aircraft I've got it on, I've turned it off because I don't like its behavior. It does things I don't want the aircraft to do. The only time it is good, and actually there's one good thing about object avoidance, is for return to home, because it will avoid buildings and trees for the most part. It's a get out of jail for that purpose. But in normal flight, I have no interest in it at all.
Have you ever tried to race a drone with object avoidance? Come to the first gate, it goes, nah.
Even the DJI FPV, you try to fly the FPV drone when the object avoidance is on. It just whinges all the time. It beeps at you continuously. It's just a bloody nightmare.
Yeah, Kevin and John there. Yeah, exactly. To both points. Most people need it's what they said about what's those wings from Parrot, not from Parrot, from
and the home exercise equipment that everyone's got in the back of the wardrobe. Yep.
Exactly. It's all that sort of thing, isn't it? And as you say, if the prices shoot up for this Christmas, then it's not the impulse buy that you're going to just. Oh, here, I have this.
So where will the regulators get all their money from? Where's the revenues going to come to support these UTMs? Drone deliveries are bust. People aren't going to buy new drones. I'm going to buy sub 250. Have all this expensive infrastructure and Google there with its little ticket clipper waiting for people to come and nothing happens. What a shame.
And it'll be interesting on the delay, because delay always makes people think. Like I'm waiting on the new iPhone myself because I'm a few years out of upgrade, and I've been waiting now since launch, and it's not going to come till the end of October, and I'm already having enough time to think, do I really need to spend that much money? Because if it delivered 2 days later, it would be too late. I'd already be there.
What was Louis shaking there?
He's probably already got it.
What did he have there?
Is that the new one, Louis?
Yeah.
But is it? I unfortunately, Apple wouldn't take my money on the morning of the launch and would only take my money in the afternoon. But then again, I did order the Pro Max.
Oh God!
So
you look like an old man that needs a very big screen to.
Well, I've got an XS Max now, so I like big phones.
You need one of these to make phone calls.
I do like big phones, but for me, they're
very, very small.
They are genuinely. I have spent laptop money on a phone, but to be perfectly honest, I don't use laptops anymore. I've completely stopped using laptops. I use my phone for everything. I don't use tablets.
Get one of these if you want to. It works as a phone, and it's not an iPad, so you get.
I got an iPad, but it doesn't work.
That's an iPad.
Jesus, that's a graphics card, Gary. That's worth real money. Hold on a minute. What is that? Hold on. That could be worth at least what is it? GT? What model?
It's hang on.
It could be worth anything.
GX
That's worth
295N.
That's worth at least £600 in today's market.
Well, that's the trouble. The annoying thing is I wouldn't mind a computer upgrade, but there's no way I'm going to do that.
Can't buy it.
No way. Well, no. A, I couldn't buy it, but B, I wouldn't. I'm not going to pay those sort of prices, for something that'll be cheap in 10 years' time. Then I have a Geo Chromebook, crazy cheap for the specs. Indeed. Yeah, no, the Chromebooks have done very well. I love the Raspberry Pi 400. I've got other options.
Now we know what Ian wants for Christmas.
Yes.
So 2 terabytes iPhone 13 Pro Max, whatever. How many letters on the top?
256 was the limit of my budget, unfortunately, and that was still more. That was an eye-watering amount of money.
And that'll work really well now. You got the 5G Vax in your blood. That'll be just fantastic.
Yes, yeah. It connects to me. I don't know if you know this. If you're vaccinated, you don't need a SIM card. It connects to you, and then it spreads the data automatically.
No. You just use the lightning connector, and you put your fingernail inside the lightning connector and bob your ankle.
Oh, lightning! I was trying to plug a lamp in there, and it wouldn't work. Lightning.
I thought I'd go on a scale and I'd weigh less, but it also didn't work. Yes, we are definitely now talking nonsense. So go in once, go in twice. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls around the world, thank you very much for bearing with us, because we certainly were painful. Sorry? Was there a reveal? Was I looking away?
I just said, thank you for joining 4 grumpy old men.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Obviously, well, I'm the young man here, but no, it's Ian, isn't it? Oh, anyway, I'll have a moan about that. Wherever you are in the world, look after yourselves. Stay safe in these weird times. Christmas is coming, and according to Ian, we're not going to be able to. Ian says Christmas is cancelled, so if Christmas is cancelled, it's Ian's fault because he mentioned it earlier.
That's what I'm telling my
So we
kids.
can-
The new Grinch drone comes without props. Fantastic.
Comes without props, yeah. Look after yourselves wherever you are in the world. We'll see you again, 2100 GMT. Perhaps our legal case people will be with us, but maybe not. Maybe he won't have finished reading Tyler and Jonathan by then, but we'll
It's
see.
only
Look
83
after-
pages. They get on with it.
Well, that's what he said. That's what he said. That's exactly what he said to me a couple of hours ago when he said, not tonight. So anyway, see you next week, 2100 GMT. Look after yourselves, everyone. 2 clicks. Here we go. Here's the first. There's one. Bye-bye. And